is where all the seed is. In no time at all. Yeah, it's bad. There's a good cross section. Hello, welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather. How many of you know what this is? This is the first ripe armpit melon of the season. It was actually on the ground of the greenhouse this morning. A lot of melons, when they're ripe, will release themselves from the vine quite readily. I think watermelons don't necessarily, and in my experience honeydews kind of don't, but this type of melon, this is a cross between a Kajari and a Charente melon. It's got some cantaloupe influence in it, and those do tend to just fall off the vine. They also tend to smell really melony when they are ready, and honestly I'm a little bit nervous about what could be going on in here. So just a little bit of a backstory. This melon is one that we're trying to stabilize seed for. This cross was unintentional. It happened because of pollinators on our farm, and I really would love to make this stable and provide seeds for everybody down the road. It takes about 8 generations of breeding of plants to get a seed that will breed true, and we're not there. This is the original F1 seed. Inside this melon is F2 seed, and I may or may not keep seed out of this particular melon because it doesn't smell armpity to me. It smells like a melon, which is good, but one of the signatures of the armpit melon is that it does have a pretty serious musky scent to it. It's not offensive, and I've explained it like, some people will understand what I mean and some people probably won't. But you know, when you really, really love somebody and you kind of enjoy that musk that they get when they've been outside for a while, it's like that. It's a fondness. Anyway, this melon should be orange on the inside, and there are some flavor notes that I really want it to have. I'm a little bit nervous that this one is not going to be up to snuff, but we get to open it and see. Nope. Oh, darn it all. It's green. I thought it might be not what I wanted. Armpit melons are orange on the inside, and I could basically smell that this was going to be green. This smells like honeydew, which isn't right, and that is unfortunate. Now, I did plant 6 armpit melons out of my F1 seeds that I have from that first year where I collected seed, and so one of them is bound to be correct, and hopefully the pollinations that the bees did inside the greenhouse will have helped kind of solidify those genetics to the next generation. But I'm really scared that we're going to lose the armpit melon, but we're just going to have to see. This is going to be a delicious melon no matter what, but it's not the armpit, so I'm not saving this seed. I did, however, start saving seeds out of some of our tomatoes. My kids have been growing some massive Belgian giant tomatoes in their garden, and what I'm doing here is just fermenting the tomato seeds. This is one of the ways that you can save seeds out of a plant that has mucilage around the seed, a lot like this guy here. There's this jelly that is around the seeds. You see that really frequently in things like melons and cucumbers. Things like cucumbers, when the seed is ready, the fruit is essentially unedible. It's not really the case for melons, and especially not with tomatoes, but when the fruit is at its edible stage, there usually is this mucilage around the seed, and that's to protect the seed on its way through the digestive tract of an animal. And by the time it makes its way out, that mucilage has worked its way off and it's ready to go as far as planting goes. This here simulates that. Putting the seed in some water for a time will help ferment that mucilage off the seed so that when it comes time for planting it, the watering of the soil doesn't have to work through that mucilage that would have dried on the outside of the seed in order to get the seed to germinate. Now, this doesn't always have to happen. I have saved seed just straight out of the tomato and planted them, and it's been fine. This just helps increase the odds of good germination. So far I still have quite a few seeds with some mucilage around them. I only started this yesterday. Usually takes a few days, but I'm just going to give it a swirl every once in a while, and then it will be good to go, and I'll show you the process of drying those out this week. Yummy. It reminds me of a Kajari, which you can see the influence of a Kajari melon here if you've ever seen that grown. It's just a lot more washed out looking. It's yummy. It's not armpity. All right, so we're out in the greenhouse and I have some nets. This is gonna help catch any of the melons that ripen before I can get to them to prevent them from falling. Basically, if they fall and crack open, the ants are gonna get to them instantly and we don't get to enjoy them, and that would be really sad. This here is the plant that armpit melon that's not an armpit melon came from, and all of the fruit on this plant are going to be the same. So this little guy down here that is starting to ripen, that's gonna be just the same, but it was delicious, so we will save it, even though I don't want to keep the seeds from it. These melon bags that I got online, they're quite big, but that's okay. I'll just put it around the melon here and then use the string that comes with it on the top to tie it to the trellis here. And then there we go. If and when this melon drops, this net's gonna catch it and we can eat it. Every 8 to 10 days or so, I need to be doing my feed run. I think it's really the dream and the hope of, maybe not most homesteaders, but a lot of homesteaders, to be self-sufficient. And I think a lot of the times that notion is a little bit misunderstood, because if you're getting a lot of your sustenance for your farm off of the farm, that system can break down pretty quickly, and that's not self-sufficient. A homestead that's self-sufficient is more like a circular model, where you're growing the feed for the animals, feeding those animals that feed. The animals then poop as they do, and use that to fertilize the ground that then feeds your animals. And we're not there. I don't actually have a dream of being self-sufficient. We actually really enjoy the notion of community sufficiency. And so when we shop, we try to shop small and we try to shop local. Now that's not to say that these systems still can't break down, because they can. But if I'm going to be buying anything off the farm, those are the kinds of systems and stores and things that I would like to support. So we're headed out to a little bitty farm store, which is in Cadiz, Kentucky. It's actually about 20 minutes from our house. Back roads only. It's lovely and glorious. I've shown you this store before. It was maybe, I can't remember if it was this last December or the December beforehand, but I'll put the whole tour of this place in the description box below. They have changed a lot, so maybe we'll film in there while we're there, but I need to pick up my feed in the very least. Now, one of the things that I need is a mineral bucket for our new buck barn that hopefully they can't tip or step in that much. And I don't know if something like that exists at all. Cool. Yeah, that is cool, but it's kind of deep. You know, we got some little boys out there. I have a lot of those fence feeders that have clips, but they tend to rub against those and just flip stuff out of them. And something like this, they would poop in and flip over. I thought about one of these corner buckets.
It's cool.
I mean, it's kind of deep, but given how easily they can mess it up, I also want it to be easy to take off wherever I hook it to and clean. I don't know if what I'm hoping for exists. We might have to make something. This here is all part of the new add-on to the store, and it's big and gorgeous. Got gardening stuff over here. This is where I get my favorite garden waterer, hand water right here. Seed spreader. This is what I seeded the pasture with. Tools galore. There's a lot of like plumbing supplies. One of these days I want to upgrade my garden cart to something more sturdy. Like maybe even something like this. It's like Big Daddy dump cart. I like that. So this entire place is on an Amish farm. A lot of the Amish have their businesses right where they live, and that's really cool. And a lot of times they run their businesses just like they would their home. So a neat example of that is right here. Up there is a little light, and it's propane run. There's actually like a filament up in there, and it's fed by this propane tank right here. So they probably have to get on the ladder, I imagine, to turn that on, but I don't really know. Then of course we've got some really neat details right here that looks like it picks up hay. Obviously it's not used anymore, but they've got it as decoration. Little touches like that are really cool. And then I know the store owner is really proud of this barn wall. It's barn wood on this wall right here. Gorgeous. And then out here is where all the feed is. Pallets of feed. They mostly, as far as what we buy, the brand is Combotch. This here, that's the rabbit pellet we get, but this is the brand right here. We've loved it. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the cost. That is something that a lot of people have questions about. And so today I got 4 bags of milk maker goat feed, 2 bags of alfalfa, 2 bags. Yesterday she put her foot in the bucket, so I might need to haul her. I got 2 bags of layer pellet, 3 bags of rabbit pellet, a bag of cat food, a bag of goat mineral, and the power porker pig feed, if I didn't mention that before. And I did get the bag of cat food for free for taking pictures of their store and updating the Google link to their store. And one of the rabbit feeds was half off because the bag was open. We did spend about $250. And I also got a Chewy delivery this morning, and that is my rice bran pellet. That comes every month and is about $30, $33. Now that is quite a bit of money to feed the farm in the summertime, when really this is the cheapest that our feed bill is, because a lot of our animals eat off of the land. They do eat grass and things, but in order for things like our dairy goats to be the most productive and to keep good condition, I do have to feed grain. Yeah, it's not cheap. However, when you think about it, what ultimately happens with a lot of homesteads is you trade your grocery bill for a feed bill. And sometimes when you're in the very beginning and you're not really getting a lot of production off of your farm, you can kind of have both at once. And that's the stage where I think a lot of people wonder, you know, is this worth it? Because you have the feed bill as well as the grocery bill in the very beginning while you're building up your pantry, while you're working on raising the animals to fill the freezer. It can really feel like a lot. But once you really get into it and you get, you know, that first year or 2 out of the way, and you've got these things under your belt to eat off of, and you've also got more skills with doing things like making cheese, that kind of stuff really adds up. And so not only have you effectively traded your grocery bill for a feed bill, the food that you are able to feed your family from the farm generally is a higher quality for a lower price. Now this may just depend on the area and what you have access to, but that's how it is here. We get a much higher quality of food for our family for a cheaper price than we could get the exact same thing at the grocery store, if we could even get it. I mean, things like goat meat we can get around here. It's about, last time I checked, it was $8.99 a pound, and that's expensive. And I think that's bone-in, so all things to consider. One thing I do know is we don't have access to things like raw goat's cheese. We have seen raw goat's milk for sale. It was $20 a gallon. And I can tell you, it doesn't cost $20 a gallon for goat's milk when you're doing it yourself, especially when you consider all of the other things that the goats get you as far as in return. I have a whole video on if dairy goats are worth it and cost breakdowns and all that. I'll make sure to leave that down below. So if you're in the beginning stages and you're wondering if it's worth it, it doesn't seem worth it quite yet, give it some time. Learn some of these skills to help get the most out of what you're growing. It can absolutely be worth it. Good evening. Lots of exciting things happened today. You will have seen it before this video post, but we just had ultrasounds done on our goaty girls that are due this coming fall, and they're all bred. And it was a really fun time. I'll link it if you missed it. But I have loaded up the roaster with tomatoes from the week, and I just happened to notice that my greenhouse vents are shut, which means that it's cool out and I have some beans to pick. The vent is shut. That is heat activated. Look at that, a spider right here. So is it just me, or is this an extra spider year? We usually have a couple of weeks where those, I call them the flying spiders, but it's the spiders that kind of take a ride on the wind in the fall time. I'm not talking about those. We have a lot of like orb spiders, just different types of spiders that are all over the place this year. And I can remember when we moved here in 2019, there was a lot of spiders and I love them. I don't necessarily want them in my bed, okay? Like, we have limits, but I really like sharing my space with them. And they're everywhere this year. So is that happening near you too? Looks like this guy has caught a snack. We'll try to avoid him. I tried to avoid a spider last week and failed. So hopefully we can be successful today. Oh yes, and a very interesting update since the garden tour last week. This squash that had survived the squash bugs has officially succumbed to the squash bugs. Ugh, isn't that insane? So we've got an adult right here and then all the little nymphs. Oh my gosh, you think the chickens want this? I just shook a bunch of them off. No, sir, this is not for you. Uh-oh. Look, you don't want the buggies on it, sir. Here, let's shake the bugs off. I'm not giving it to you with all those bugs on it. All right, that's better. Oh, yum. I think the chickens found the bugs, not my thumb, sir. Oh, you're so cute. You didn't like it? Wasn't really your style. I know it's not a bean. Look at the inside of it. You can see the influence from the spaghetti squash on that wacky cross that we grew. Here, you don't like it, do you? Here you go, chickens. Meanwhile, sir. A lot of these beans have rust on them, which is a disease. It can come from things like beetles chewing on the plants. A lot of the beans are a little bit past their prime. Like this one, the seeds on the inside are pretty big. As I'm picking through, cucumber beetles and things are coming at me and landing on my glasses, and I'm still finding quite a lot of spiders. And see, inside that isn't very nice. So I think I'm probably done. Honestly, we'll probably just throw these beans at feral. And I did just replant more beans in the green stock that's in my perennial garden. So I think we're gonna shift focus a little bit and go for some of the black-eyed peas. Looks like tomorrow probably should be a tomato day. Feral! Come here, sweetie, look what I have. Do you want them to be hand-fed to you exclusively? I don't think we have the light for that. This is where my cow peas are, and a lot of them actually are ready to pick. Dang, that one kind of looks like it's got sun scald or something. It has been really hot here, but I am going to pick these off. You could leave them and just pick them when they're all dry. In the past, I've done that, but I've also picked them as I see them because we do sometimes have an issue with rodents coming in and eating the little peas straight out of the pod. Very depressing. We've had a lot less issue with rodents and things since we got our outdoor cats, and it's been wonderful. I can tell that the pods are ready to pick when they're dry and crispy. This variety gets like a tan color, but then I do have the purple hull pink eyes, which look like that. These are mine. No, these are mine. You're cute. You're cute. Oh, good evening. I just got back in from harvesting the tomatoes again. So it might have been 3 days ago we harvested, or I harvested off camera again because it's so hot outside. My camera can't even keep up. But I harvested this amount, and this amount of tomatoes is actually what went into the roaster the other day. Now initially I could only fit in what was in this basket plus one of these little plastic trays. That's all that would fit in the roaster. But after those tomatoes roasted overnight, I was able to dip out some of the liquid from inside the roaster, and that created more space, and I was able to put in the last tray. So there's a lot of tomatoes in here. Now I already taken my immersion blender and blitzed it into a nice thick sauce. Look at that. This is just a standard tomato sauce, thick and lovely. And when I make tomato sauce, I do leave the seeds and the skins in there. I have tried so many different ways of making tomato sauce, and to include like with a food mill and things, and I just don't like it. I don't like even using one of those hand mills. I've tried to use them before, and I feel like I only end up with juice. My tomato sauce ends up very watery, kind of like tomato soup, but not even that, because it hasn't been good. So I do the entire tomato. Some people can have digestive issues when they leave the seeds and skin on. Thankfully, we don't have a problem with that. So I've got to get this first batch of tomato sauce all canned up. And then in no time at all, these guys will be ready. I think I am going to do another batch of roasted salsa with some of these. I'm going to make some more confit with some of the cherry tomatoes. Look at all those. Oh yeah, and our cowpeas from yesterday, I sat with my husband watching a show and shelled them. This is what they look like. They're not all completely dried. I probably need to set them out on an actual plate where they can not be so crammed together, but aren't they cool looking? So yeah, let me get the stove over the counter all cleared off, and we'll get to canning the sauce. Alright, in most canners, you can fit 7 quarts. And I'm hoping that I have more than 7 quarts of sauce here. If I do, I'll do 2 canner loads. I'm using my steam canner today. If you are not familiar with steam canning, it's amazing. It's my favorite way of preserving food, high acid food. You treat a steam canner like you would a water bath canner. You want to do only high acid foods, and you want to use the water bath canning times on the canning recipe. What this does is it uses a small amount of water on the bottom. It uses about 2.5 quarts, and it creates a steam environment instead of submerging the jars in water. And steam gets very, very hot, and so it is an adequate substitute for water bath canning that doesn't use as much water. And because of that, things go a lot faster because you don't have to wait for that big old pot of water to heat up. It's also incredibly light. Walking around with this is a lot easier than trying to walk around with a really big, full water bath canner. Even though tomatoes are high acid in and of themselves, I like to add an acidifier because different varieties of tomatoes have different acidity levels, and different growing conditions make for different acidity levels, and this helps me know that everything is acid enough to be safe. So it is 2 tablespoons of lemon juice per quart. This little thing is a 2 tablespoon measurer, 1/8 cup. And then I like to salt the tomato sauce, and it's 1 teaspoon per quart. The recipes that you find online for canning tomato sauce tell you to fill your jars to a 1/4 inch headspace. Tomato products tend to siphon. They tend to basically bubble over the side, and so I like to break the rule and take it down to a 1/2 inch headspace, and I have a lot less siphoning. When a tomato product siphons over, it's very messy, and very frequently my jars do not seal, and I don't like that. I used to can up different things like pizza sauce and chili base, pasta sauce, and things like that. I don't anymore. I will do ketchup, but besides that, if I want this to be pizza sauce, I'll just season it like pizza sauce when it comes to make pizza. Or if I want it to be pasta sauce, same thing. I'll just season it when I go to use it. It just helps everything be more versatile, and I like that. So we're definitely going to get more than 7 quarts, but that's all the canner can fit for now. I've got a little wooden chopstick here. Just going to swizzle it around a little to bring any little air bubbles to the surface. I'm going to wipe down the jar rims, make sure they're good and clean. See? That would prevent a good seal. We don't want that on there. Another thing that I've noticed helps the jars not siphon is to heat up the canner slowly and cool it down slowly. Introducing cold air to the jars soon after they're done, it just makes for like a volcanic eruption out of the jars. So I've got it set to a medium, and I'm going to let the heat come up slowly, and once I have my target temp for my elevation, I'll start the timer. These will can for 40 minutes. If you want a more comprehensive step-by-step how-to on steam canning, I did take a video a couple years ago. I'll leave that down below. Okay, my canner is done. I'm venting a little bit of the steam to help with the siphoning, but I've got 2.5 trays of the confit ready to go. I'm gonna stick this in the oven to roast. I plan on putting all this in the freezer. Can you see past my bread? I don't think so. Gorgeous. Good morning. So I don't normally do garden stuff early in the morning. I actually don't do a lot relatively early in the morning. I'm not a morning person, but it's been so dang hot here that I don't really have a choice. If I want to get ahead on the weeds and things that are starting to take over my greenhouse, I need to be out here early. We have had heat indexes in the like 104, 105 range for a couple weeks at this point, and I don't foresee that really changing. And because of all of the moisture we've been getting too, the weeds and things are having a good time here in the greenhouse. I do have weed fabric down in the greenhouse. This I put down in, I think 2021, after I took the pigs out of here. Goodness, I can't remember, but it's been in here a while. Weed fabric does fine for a time, but it does need upkeep. It's really not just to lay it down and you never have weeds again kind of thing. Actually, some pretty intense weeds can grow up through like the tiniest hole on the weed fabric and just go to town. But also, over time, as like the leaves from the plants fall or like mud can squish up through the weed fabric, a layer of soil really can develop on top. And of course, weeds and things can grow into that. So I think ultimately I am going to just have essentially grass growing in here instead of trying to fight the weed fabric. But I think that even some of these weeds are a little bit tall. I think I might see how well some of these hand pull versus trying to get the weed whacker. But I've got a whole like garden bed here that you can't even see. Yeah, it's bad. Look at this big spider web. Oh man, I don't know where the spider is. It's one of the reasons that sometimes spaces of mine can get a little bit out of hand, because I know what can be hiding in the long grass or whatever, and I tend to avoid it until it's a bigger problem than it was. That's a me problem. Seen lots of these guys lately. Here, do you want to go on them? Go over here. See this here? This is Japanese knotweed. And this is the reason I don't think at this point I can really get away with the weed whacker, exclusively because this is really thick and fibrous. It's just easier to pull it out. Last year, I think it was last year or the year before, I was weeding in this exact spot and I found what I'm assuming is a nest of sweat bees. And if you've never been stung by sweat bees, it hurts really bad. It's up there with a wasp. I haven't been stung yet, but I think before I'm done cleaning the greenhouse, I'll get stung by something for sure, which is one of the reasons I've been avoiding it. I've been out here for 42 minutes at this point, and this looks loads better. Oh my goodness. There's quite a few wasps buzzing around, so I don't know that I didn't disturb a nest in here somewhere, but that looks so much better. And we can actually tell there's a bed here now. I didn't go down the whole row. There's a whole bunch of the brown wasps. See, there's one there. You can see flying. I've seen quite a few in this area. There's a box down there. And in my experience, they do like boxes inside this greenhouse for their nesting site. So I think I'll have Levi help me with the rest of this corner. But this still feels like a success. All this down here, strawberry runners. I plan on collecting quite a few of these runners a little bit later on to help repopulate my strawberry area out in the perennial garden. But this feels good in the very least. If I can do 45 minutes to an hour of clean out, oh God, more wasps. If I can do 45 minutes to an hour of clean out every morning, give or take, it won't take too long for this to look a lot better. Good evening. So it's actually been a little while since I brought you along for a dinner, and tonight I'm actually cooking the belly roll rabbit. I have cooked this once before, except I didn't stuff it. We're gonna stuff the belly roll tonight, and if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, there's a cut of rabbit that I discovered recently. New Day Family Farm has a video on this cut, and I will link it down below. Basically, you piece out the loin and the part of the rabbit called the belly flap, and you get this boneless piece of meat that when it's rolled up, it reminds me a lot of chicken breast. And so we're going to be cooking that up today and rolling it up with some mozzarella cheese and some ham, and essentially making like a rabbit cordon bleu. I've got my salt, pepper, and flour, a couple of eggs in here, and then I've got my breading. Now with something like chicken, it's pretty easy just to add breading to the outside of the chicken and get it to stick. Where rabbit doesn't have a lot of fat, you want to make sure that if you want the breading to stick to the rabbit pretty well, that you go through this process. Essentially, the flour and this egg acts as our binder for the breadcrumbs and just makes things a world easier. All right, so first things first, I made this mozzarella cheese earlier from the milk from today's milking. I have eaten some of it, but we've got plenty to use tonight. There are 7 belly rolls that I'm going to be making tonight, so I've got 7 little sticks of mozzarella. I have this purchased ham. I have not gotten into making deli meats with our farm-raised meat yet. I do have this thing, the deli meat maker, and I have tried to use it before, but I didn't have a really great result. So if you have used something like this before and you've got a good recipe, I would love to hear it. But what I'm looking for is to replicate something like this. What I've made in the past is more like a salami. You can't really slice it thin and have it just be this delicious texture. This is what I'm after, and I don't know how possible it is. But I'm gonna be taking some of these slices and just rolling up my cheese on the inside, so when the cheese melts, hopefully the ham can hold it in. All right, here are my belly rolls, thawed from the freezer. This is what one of them looks like all rolled up. And previously this is how I've cooked it, and it's been delicious. Actually, we have one child who doesn't like chicken meat, and she would not eat this because she didn't believe me that it wasn't chicken. So what we have here is the loin piece on top, and then down here is the belly flap. And hopefully this is what we'll be able to do. Kind of tuck it in like so. I may hold it with a toothpick while it's cooking, and then we'll take it out obviously before we eat it, but just to make sure things stay together as intended. All right, so first things first is the flour, and then the egg. I know there are specific orders to do things with different hands. I'm not good at it, so I just get messy fingers. And then the breadcrumb. There we go. Set that right in my pan. All right, so here they are. I've got 4 in one pan and 3 in another. I was gonna cram them all into one, but I'm a little bit worried about them getting soggy. Now, having said that, I am going to cover these for the hour or the first hour that they're cooking. Rabbit, being very, very lean, can tend to dry out quickly. And for the most part, you either want to cook rabbit with a lot of moisture in it, like in a broth or a gravy, or you want to cook it covered. This is going to make the breading a little bit soggy, but at the end of the cook time, we're going to remove the cover, and the top is really going to crisp up nicely. My oven is set for 325, and we're going to take these covers off in an hour. A little bit of a cheese leak, but even with the cover on, this isn't super, super soggy. You've got some brownie here. I'm gonna put this in for another 10 minutes or so, just to get a little bit more crispy. All right, now, most of them did leak a little bit, but I guess that was to be expected. I've never actually made homemade chicken cordon bleu. We always bought the frozen type. I dare say you could fool somebody into thinking that's chicken. This is a really great cut, you guys. Remy, the cat wants some. And there's a good cross section. So that there is the loin, and then we have like the belly flap portion. And then there is still a little bit of cheese in there. See, the breading stick's nice. I'm excited to eat this. Good morning. I just got done editing the majority of this video and then realized I either never recorded or never did actually show you the end of the seed starting process. So I've already put away the seeds that we started before, but it turns out that I have set up another batch. This is another bit of Belgian giant seed, and I don't know if you're going to be able to tell with that right there, but when I swirl this around, I can see that the seeds are separated from the mucilage. The seeds are moving freely from the rest of the tomato gunk in there, and that means that they're ready to lay out. So I have this little strainer here. You could use a metal type if you wanted to. This one happens to be nylon. And I'm just gonna strain out the water. And what I'm doing over here is just running the seeds under the cool water. You don't want it to be hot, and just moving them around in the strainer. This is gonna help push some of that mucilage and extra tomato bits through, and then the seeds will stay in the strainer. Steam in there. All right, now I've already saved some very interesting seed. I'll talk to you about that in a second. But what I do is just take a piece of paper towel, dump the seeds out onto it, and then spread them out in like a thin layer. Now when these dry, and you'll see that when we move these over, they can tend to stick a little bit to the paper towel. That is not a problem. Even if you get a little bit of paper towel bit attached to the seeds, that's not going to affect germination at all. Actually, a lot of people who grow microgreens will grow them on paper towel because the really delicate roots and things can and do absolutely grow through the paper towel, and it degrades down into the soil just fine. So this is what we have. I'm going to lay this out until it dries. It usually just takes a day or so, but as you can see I did here, we are going to label this so I know what's what. So we're going to put Belgian Giant because that's what these ones are. My kids grew huge Belgian Giants this year, and I didn't want to miss out on saving those seeds. I know a lot of it is probably nutrition, but just in case some of that is genetics, one of them was 1.8 pounds, which is great. There we go, got it all labeled. I'll just set this over here. And then when it comes to packing them away, I do have little seedling packets, but I don't know where they are. I'm sure I'll find them when I clean off my desk. But we're gonna pack away these seeds. So these have been sitting out since I think yesterday. And these are really, really tiny. This is a currant tomato that I found on my property. I usually will see yellow currant tomatoes. This one was red, and I've never planted a red currant. I have planted like a spoon tomato, which maybe could be considered a currant tomato, but it was really tiny. This guy seems like a cross between the yellow currant tomato that is basically growing wild on my farm here and a red type variety, probably a super sweet 100. So I wanted to capture that. So I've got the seed here. I'm gonna label my envelope. I'm calling it the red yellow, and then I'll put the year right here. You could probably just, you know, pack it in the seed packet just like this if you wanted to, and then just pick them off as you wanted to use them. But I want to show you how relatively easy this comes off of the paper towel. See, oops. Especially when you've fermented a good bit of the mucilage off of the tomatoes, they come off pretty well. And sometimes they stick together. It's not a huge deal. You can kind of pick them apart with your fingernail. But yeah, that's really all it is to seed saving as far as the types of seeds that have that mucilage on the outside. You do want to store your seed in paper if possible. You can store them in plastic, but if there is any residual moisture left in the seed, that's just going to degrade the seed faster if it's in plastic. If it's in paper, it can essentially continue to dry out in here, even though you do want to pack them when they're as dry as possible. There we have it. The red yellow currant packed away for another year. Probably next year we'll plant this intentionally. Anywho, as always, I've got a lot going on still. I've got another roaster full of tomatoes. I have a Swiss cheese that I need to taste and repack. And I have a freeze dryer full of onions. So there's a sneak peek into next week. I'll see you guys again soon.